Hello everybody, welcome to today's stream. Today actually instead of live writing because it's I'm reading to work on the method section. I actually want to discuss something with you guys that I discussed in my master's thesis magic series, which is a series here on the channel. You can find it on the YouTube channel for master students and to help them out with their thesis. And in my last video, what I discussed is this, this usual mistake that master students make about, where they basically are trying to find a hole in the literature and they say, well, nobody has ever studied this, so this is why my thesis is important. And I sort of talked about how that's a really bad strategy. And my suggestion was that instead of telling people that there is something missing, you are bringing people something new, okay? And and the title of the video is Giants versus Gaps, because I really love this quote in the homepage of Google Scholar that says standing on the shoulders of giants. So basically the idea is that when you write a literature review, you need to focus on what people have done right rather than on what they have done wrong. And basically what I want to do, that video discusses this from let's say a theoretical or how-to standpoint. Let me just get it, how-to standpoint. So, ways to do it and so on. So in this video, what I want to do is I just want to give you an example of how you do this in a paper, okay? And for that, I want to tell you about how I wrote the final part of the theory section of this paper, which is a paper that uses something called serious leisure, which is a specific theory of motivation, serious leisure, to explain how leaders can improve volunteer performance without jeopardizing their retention, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through my outline for this section, which, is still a little bit rough, but, that will show a little bit how you can do this in practice, okay? So obviously in the theory section, everything is connected, right? So you don't have like three parts like I have here that are, disconnected from one another. So I just need to tell you a little bit about the end of part 2 to then really discuss part 3, which is where I wrap up the motivation for my research and lay out the research question, okay? And if you want to know how to do this, I have there are a couple of videos that on the channel, early on the channel, that explain how do you use theory to build, what are the different parts of the theory section of a paper. And obviously this is a qualitative paper because quantitative papers are more sort of like programmatic in that you're basically writing to hypotheses, right? So anyway, so in this theory, I basically begin by saying that there's a trade-off between performance management and retention in volunteer organizations, something that does not happen in companies, okay? And I explain why. Then I say, okay, there's this research on serious leisure that can help us understand how to overcome this challenge, okay? And notice that here, I'm not saying that nobody has studied this challenge. What I'm saying is that this challenge exists and it's well documented, okay? And that there are challenges in overcoming this challenge. That's it, okay? I'm not saying nobody has ever looked at how to solve the trade-off between performance management and retention in volunteer organizations. I'm simply stating that trade-off is there, and I raise a number of obstacles to solving that trade-off. Now, this is, I think, an accurate review of the literature, and so implicitly, I'm saying, we haven't looked at how this is solved. Yes, we haven't looked at because this has been identified and the obstacles to its solution have been identified. But I don't want, but if you look at a paper as a conversation, I don't want to tell people that, nobody has looked at this before, right? What I want to do is, first, I want to remind people in that conversation that this problem exists and that this problem is real and that this problem matters, okay? Then I say that there's this research on serious leisure, which, offers an alternative to solve this problem, right? To solve the problem of the tension between performance and retention in volunteers, okay? But I say, okay, I end by saying, okay, so this is useful, but it doesn't show us how to do it, okay? Because research on serious leisure is not worried about retention and performance. It's worried about, serious leisure and explaining how it works, right? So it doesn't explain how leaders can use serious leisure to improve retention and performance. So what I say at the end of this section is then we need to look at research on business that does look at employee development, performance and retention, and we need to introduce serious leisure in that research, okay? So basically what I'm doing is, I'm sort of like, let me geek out, a little bit like, second book of the Lord of the Rings, I'm bringing the Ents, I'm bringing the giants to fight for me, right? So I'm bringing the giant that says there's this really important research, this really important problem on retention and performance in volunteer organizations. Tree number one, Ent number one, then giant number one. Then the second giant saying, you know what, there's this research on serious leisure that can help solve this problem between performance and retention. So second giant. And then giant number three, which is what we're going to talk about now, where I say, well, there's this research on training, which serious leisure is an instance of development, so development, employee development training, and performance and retention, that has not looked at serious leisure, but it does give us a way of using serious leisure to address the problem of performance and retention in volunteers. So I now have these three giant allies on my side, right? Three giant allies on my side, standing on the shoulders of giants, like Merry and Pippin, who stood on the shoulders of Treebeard. Yes, indeed. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you how I wrap this up, because the third part of the theory section is the key part. It's the part where I lay out the skeleton for data analysis and use that skeleton to motivate my research question, okay? And I do this in a super structured way because this is a second review round and I want to make sure that reviewers can parse this very easily, okay? It also helps me thinking, right? Structure. Maybe I should do this video on what I learned from Hercule Poirot and Sherlock Holmes about writing and research. Should be a little fun video, maybe next week. Anyways, so let's see what I'm doing. Okay, so what I'm saying is that I begin by saying that research and retention and research on performance show that employee development improves both, okay? And serious leisure says that serious leisure actually offers managers an opportunity for employee development, although it is difficult, okay? Good. So, how do we use these two literatures? How do I use these giants? How do I make them work together? Okay. I argue that we need to take 3 steps to have these giants work together. Yeah. So the first step is to bring together research that looks at employee development and retention, and research that looks at employee development and performance. I looked at recent literatures from both studies, and look at past literature reviews as well, and they basically don't cross-reference one another. Okay, so these are separate. Now, because this is a tension in volunteer performance, I cannot keep them separate. I need to bring them together. So basically, what I argue is that the first step is bringing these two literatures together, and I do that by arguing that each perspective on development is a dimension of the development process in general, okay? And so research on retention is normally about training, research on performance is about learning, and I basically say these are two dimensions of the same process of employee development. So the first thing that I do is there are these two separate literatures, I bring them together. Why? Because I'm trying to address the tension between the phenomena that these two literatures explain separately, okay? Second step, and this is where I begin to lay out the theoretical contribution of the paper. I say, again, based on literature reviews, recent literature reviews, that the link between development and its effects on performance and retention are based on social exchange theory and are based on people's career prospects. Okay? Those are the two paths, let's say the two arrows linking this. Linking employee development and performance and retention. Now, I don't know if my hands were off the screen. Employee development, performance and retention. Now, second step is to say there are these two paths and I'm adding a third, right? Which is about mastery. So it's not because because I owe something to people that help me. It's not because I'm going to have a better career. It's because I am mastering a skill, okay? And where does this mastering a skill comes from? Well, from research on serious leisure. That's what I'm trying to do, integrate these three literatures, okay? So, and basically I summarize all of this research here. And then there's the final step, right? Because my research is about leadership, how leaders can take advantage of serious leisure to improve employee performance without jeopardizing retention. So what I argue is that we also need to extend the role that leaders play in the relationship in employee development, okay? The idea is that previous research either says leaders play no role because training is done separately, or that leaders just play a role in empowering training that's done separately, okay? So I have a little quote here that leaders mediate the impact of HR practices such as training on performance, okay? Now notice that as I do this, I'm already claiming two theoretical contributions of the paper, right? The first one is this alternative path, this third path between development and performance and retention, which is mastery. The second one is I am giving agency to leaders in this process. Agency to leaders in the process of employee development, okay? And basically that's my model, okay? So how do I wrap this up? The way I wrap this up is I write, this is up the skeleton of a model assembled from these different research streams, which shows that leaders can tap into serious leisure to improve performance without jeopardizing retention, but does not explain how leaders can do so. So I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So I don't remember the names of the ants. Treebird, I forgot, sorry about that. So anyway, so I'm saying, look, the basic model, the core process can be inferred from the literature. You know, I could write this as a theory piece, but what the literature doesn't tell me is what is happening, how are the different parts of this model work together, what connects them. And so in the discussion of this paper, right, what I do, because the discussion is a theoretical contribution, I come up with this self-development cycle, which is how leaders take advantage of mastery to improve performance while ensuring retention. Okay? Standing on the shoulders of giants. You notice that there's not a sentence in this theory section in any of the 3 parts that I described to you that says that there's a gap in the literature. There's zero. There's even zero implicit gap in the literature, because I'm just saying this is a problem, this is a possible solution. I'm not saying there are no other solutions. I'm saying this is a possible solution, and I'm going to show you how it works because we don't know how it works. Okay. So stand on the shoulders of giants, bring something to the conversation. I'm bringing serious leisure to the conversation instead of argue for a gap and say that people have been missing something. Bring them something new. Bring them what you know. Don't tell them about what they don't know. Okay? Now, the Master's Thesis Magic video goes a little bit into depth about this. Not much more. It does talk about an alternative strategy. Here I'm using theory. I'm standing on the shoulders of theoretical giants. You can also stand on the shoulders of empirical giants, and that video explains how. Hope you have a great weekend, and thanks so much everybody for watching. Got a lot of new viewers recently. Really appreciate that, and I hope you enjoy the channel. Have a good one, guys. Thank you.